I could always tell when the smoke wanted to speak to me. Even before I understood the rhythm of the cradle, before I learned the weight of its breath and the cadence of its murmur, something in me responded to it. Some instinct older than memory, older than fear. It would press gently first, like fingers testing the edge of my thoughts, and then curl itself around my senses until I could see it. The figures shifting inside the haze, coalescing from drifting soot like half-formed memories climbing out of a dream. That morning, it formed the shape of my mother. I knew it wasn't her. The real woman had died when I was 8. Her lungs collapsing under the poison she spent her whole life inhaling in this cursed crater. But the smoke remembered. It always remembered. It held fragments of every life that passed through it like a jealous lover keeping souvenirs. And when it wanted something, when it hungered, it used those fragments against us. Her silhouette rose out of the rolling grayness, damp and wavering but unmistakably her. The long braid down her back, the slender hands, the slight tilt of her head. I felt the old instinctive pull, the one that made my bones lean toward her before my brain could resist. "Not today," I whispered, turning away. The smoke shivered, as though in disappointment, and the figure collapsed back into the cloud with a sigh that wasn't quite wind. The crater walls groaned in response. They always did at dawn, stretching like stone ribs around us, holding the village too tightly, as if the earth itself was trying to keep us from leaving. People here used to say the crater was once a mountain that swallowed itself in grief. I don't know if that's true, but I believe the grief part. Living here felt like suffocating in someone else's sorrow. I stepped out of my hut, pushing open the curtain of woven reeds, and the morning smoke swallowed me whole. Visibility in the cradle was never more than an arm's length. But after decades of life here, you stopped needing your eyes. You listened instead to the crunch of the soot underfoot, to the drip of condensation rolling off the rocks, to the soft rustle of figures brushing past you that might be real villagers or might be echoes made of ash. "Jaren!" A voice barked to my left. I recognized old Tarek immediately. No one else spoke with the gravelly tone of someone who'd smoked the crater's toxic air for nearly 70 years and refused to die. I turned toward his voice. "I'm here." He emerged as a dark smudge within the fog, his outline bobbing as he limped toward me. "Smoke's restless today," he muttered. "Bad winds overnight. When isn't it restless?" He gave me a sharp look that I could only half see. "Don't start with that. Mark my words. Today isn't like other days." Tarek wasn't wrong often. He had a way of listening to the crater the same way others listened to the sea, reading its moods, interpreting its warnings. And when he said something was wrong, people paid attention. "It spoke to you?" I asked. "It did more than that." He lowered his voice. "It tried to make itself familiar." A chill crawled up my spine. The smoke forming vague shapes was normal. It mimicked gestures, shadows, memories. But when it tried to perfect the details, when it tried to truly look like someone, that was different. That meant it was learning. "Who did it show you?" I asked quietly. Tarek hesitated. Then he whispered, "My son." I swallowed hard. Tarek's son had died 20 years ago, lost to the fumes while trying to climb the crater wall. He'd been one of the only ones brave enough to attempt escape. And now the smoke was wearing his face again. Before I could respond, a distant scream cut through the haze. We froze. A second scream followed, higher, rawer. Not fear, agony. Tarek grabbed my arm. "That's coming from the north ring." We ran, stepping blindly through the thickening fumes, our breaths shallow to avoid inhaling too deeply. The path curved around the crater, though path was a generous word. It was more like a habitual route carved by countless feet stumbling through generations of blindness. The screaming grew louder, sharper, then abruptly cut off. When we reached the north ring, several villagers were already gathered in a loose circle, their lanterns making halos of dim gold in the swirling smoke. The glow reflected off a shape on the ground. Something pale sprawled across the soot. It was Mira, a girl of 13, the only daughter of the healer. Her skin, normally a warm brown, was blanketed in white-gray ash as though she'd been rolled in the smoke itself. I knelt beside her. Her eyes were open, staring upward, but there was no one left inside them. She inhaled something. Someone whispered behind me. No, Tarek said. Something touched her. I looked at him sharply. What do you mean? He pointed to her throat. I lifted her chin gently, and my stomach tightened, for black streaks ran from just under her jawline down toward her. Collarbone, thin, soot-dark lines spaced like the fingers of a hand. But the prints were too long, too slender to belong to any person. They looked like marks left by smoke made solid. She was grabbed, Tarek murmured. The smoke. It held her.
Impossible.
The smoke didn't touch. It didn't have form or weight. It only mimicked, only echoed. But Myra's body was proof of something new. I felt the crater shift around us. A deep, low groan traveled through the ground, rattling small stones and sending thin streams of soot trickling down from the walls. The smoke thickened, swirling tighter, as if pressing inward. Then something stirred inside it. Shapes moved, first faint, then sharpening. Faces, hands, bodies, dozens of them, all staring at us, all familiar. The smoke was no longer just copying memories. It was claiming them. And for the first time in my life, the crater's breath felt hungry. The faces in the smoke were clearer than they had any right to be. Too clear. I recognized my mother again, her eyes reflecting the same soft grief she carried the day she died. Beside her was the old potter, Halen, who'd suffocated last winter. Then came the twins who drowned in the runoff pits as children, their forms flickering like half-remembered lullabies. They drifted forward in a slow, synchronized glide, the smoke pulling them along as though they were puppets suspended on invisible strings. The villagers around me gasped, some falling to their knees, others scrambling back into the haze, stumbling over one another. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else whispered a name. Tarek stepped forward. Don't listen to it, he warned. Don't speak to it. But the smoke figures had already begun to move, reaching, gesturing, mimicking the motions of the people they resembled. A woman stared at the likeness of her brother, tears streaking her soot-stained cheeks as the imitation extended a hand toward her. Her body tilted instinctively, drawn by grief and longing. I grabbed her arm and yanked her back. No! The figure halted, then shifted, tilting its head with a disturbingly familiar curiosity, just like her brother had done when puzzled. It was learning, adjusting, perfecting. Behind us, Myra's small, ash-covered body lay still. We need to take her to Luria, I said. The healer will know. No one sees Luria today. Tarek's voice was grim. She's been missing since dawn. Missing? I stared at him, heart thudding. Why didn't you say that earlier? Because I didn't want panic to start before we understood what was happening. He gestured toward the crowd in front of us. But it seems the smoke took care of that on its own. A fresh wail rose from the group, a child's voice. I spun toward the sound and saw a small boy clutching his mother's leg, pointing at a tall, wavering figure drifting toward them. Papa, he whimpered. Papa's back. The boy's father had died 3 years ago. His mother shook her head frantically, pulling her son behind her. That isn't your father. Don't look at it. But it was too late. The smoke form mimicked the man's uneven gait, his bent shoulder, the way he used to lift his son with a playful flourish. The child's eyes went wide with recognition, lips parting in a desperate cry. The mother screamed and dragged him away. The smoke figure reached after them, but its hand was no longer just a swirl of haze. It had fingers, smoky, dark, elongated fingers. Tarek swore under his breath. It's happening faster now. I crouched, lifting Myra's limp body gently into my arms. She weighed far too little. The crater always took its toll on the young first. Her head lolled against my shoulder, the faint imprint of those black streaks stark against her ash-gray skin. We need to get somewhere safe, I said. All of us. Where? A villager shouted behind me. There is no safe anywhere. He wasn't wrong. The crater had always been a prison, but today it felt alive, awake and watching. Thunder rumbled faintly above us, muffled by the choking canopy of smoke that permanently roofed the crater. A wind stirred, swirling the haze into twisting ropes that coiled around each other like serpents. And then I felt it again. The pressure, the whisper, a voice inside the smoke. Not a sound, but the shape of a thought brushing against mine. Come back. My heartbeat stumbled. No, not a voice. A memory. My mother's memory. The figure that wore her shape drifted closer, its fingers stretching toward my face. The smoke curled around its edges, trying to seal the seams, trying to look more whole, more real. Jaren, Tarek said urgently. Don't let it touch you. I stepped back, tightening my hold on Mira, though my legs trembled under the weight of everything. Not the girl, but the fear pressing harder with every breath. The smoke mother leaned in as if to whisper in my ear. I felt the cold of it before it even reached me, a dead chill that slid along my skin like a wet shadow. I jerked away. The figure faltered, its form, rippling, then twisted abruptly, merging back into the surrounding haze like a smear wiped clean. The other figures did the same, snapping out of existence in an instant as the smoke around us suddenly surged upward, dragging their forms with it. The haze thickened overhead, knotting itself into a massive, swirling column that churned with restless shapes. Tarek whispered, "It's gathering." "For what?" He shook his head. "I don't know." A sound rose from within the column, a low, vibrating hum that pulsed in the air like a heartbeat. "Everyone," I shouted, "move back, now!" But before anyone could respond, the humming deepened, and the smoke above us began to spiral downward, slowly, deliberately, like a great, descending hand. The crater was closing in, and we had nowhere left to run. The smoke descended in a slow, deliberate spiral, as if savoring the moment. Villagers scattered, stumbling blindly through the thickening haze. Lanterns swung wildly, their dim light swallowed almost immediately by the oppressive gray. Every breath tasted metallic, like inhaling the memory of something burned long ago. Tarek grabbed my elbow. "We need to get underground. The old mining tunnels, go!" The tunnels, of course. They were carved into the inner wall generations ago, abandoned after a cave-in killed half the workers. Most people avoided them now, convinced the collapsed stone still groaned with the voices of the trapped. But compared to this, compared to the smoke learning to touch us, I take haunted tunnels. "Follow me," I said, shifting Myra's body in my arms and pushing through the crowd. The villagers moved like frightened cattle, stumbling, choking, reaching blindly for anyone familiar. I recognized Salah's cracked voice shouting for her missing daughter. Brint, the butcher, called curse after curse at the air as if he could intimidate the smoke itself. A young couple huddled together, shielding their infant with their cloaks as the air darkened around them. The spiraling column of smoke thickened above, darkening from gray to charcoal to something almost solid. Inside the mass, shapes writhed, faces forming, merging, dissolving. Whenever one sharpened into focus, it pressed to the surface like something trying to push through, like a soul caught beneath ice. We reached the narrow slope that curved around the north wall of the crater. Our feet sank into deep soot, slick and shifting beneath us. The air grew colder with every step upward. The smoke tended to pool thickest near the center of the crater, leaving the edges slightly clearer. Slightly. As we climbed, the pressure eased just enough that outlines sharpened. I saw Tarek beside me, leaning heavily on his carved walking stick, wheezing with each breath. Behind him, a dozen villagers followed, half panicked, half dazed. "How far?" Someone gasped behind us. "Just a little," I began, and then the smoke spoke. Not a whisper, not inside my mind. A voice, a real one. "Jaren." I stopped dead. The others stumbled into me, muttering complaints, but their voices were distant, muted by the sudden roaring in my ears. "Jaren?" The smoke repeated, deeper this time, more insistent. It was my mother's voice. "No, Guers." It was almost her voice, almost a distorted imitation, like someone trying to speak through layers of cloth, shaping the syllables from memory rather than breath. I didn't turn, couldn't. Behind me, the villagers went still, sensing the shift in the air. Tarek's hand clamped down on my shoulder with iron force. "Keep moving," he whispered. "Don't listen." But the voice came again, closer now, curling around my spine like a cold tendril. "Come back, Jaren." Every instinct screamed to run. But another part of me, the part that had spent years yearning for even a glimpse of her, a whisper, a dream, strained toward the sound. "She's gone," Tarek hissed. "That thing is not her." I forced myself to take a step. The smoke behind us seethed. A hand formed inside it, dark, semi-solid, fingers stretching and elongating, reaching through the haze. "Move!" I barked, pushing forward with Mira still in my arms. We scrambled up the slope. The smoke surged behind us in a sudden, violent wave, slamming against the crater wall with a roar like an oncoming storm. We rounded the bend, and there, finally, was the tunnel entrance. A low, jagged hole in the rock, barely tall enough for a grown man to crouch through. Rotting wooden beams framed the opening, sagging under decades of weight, their surfaces blackened from old soot and decay. A few villagers hesitated, muttering fearful protests. Tarek shot them a glare so sharp it cut through the fog. "Get inside unless you want your ghosts to swallow you whole." That did it. One by one, they ducked into the tunnel. I followed them, clutching Myra's body close as the smoke swirled angrily behind me. Just as I entered, a cold tendril brushed the back of my neck. I lurched forward, nearly falling to my knees. The moment I crossed into the tunnel, the smoke stopped, dead still. It hovered just outside the entrance, roiling but unable to pass the threshold, as if the stone itself repelled it. Tarek stumbled in after me, panting. When he straightened, he stared at the boundary where the smoke pressed against the air like an unseen barrier. "It can't follow," he wheezed. "For now," I said. The villagers huddled deeper inside, trembling in the darkness. The tunnel stretched ahead, uneven and dripping with condensation. Strange, hollow moans echoed deeper within, old air shifting through narrow spaces, or something else entirely. I laid Mira gently against the wall. Her skin was cool, almost cold. If Luria were here, our healer, our last hope, she might have known what the black streaks meant. But she was gone. Taken? Lost? Dead? The uncertainty sat heavy in my chest. Tarek lowered himself beside me. "What happened to her? It's new. The smoke's never done this." "It's changing," I said. "Evolving." "Yes." He rubbed the deep lines in his brow. "And I fear we helped it." I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, a sound echoed from deeper in the tunnel. A wet, dragging noise. Not stone. Not wind. Something moving. Something breathing. And then a voice, weak, desperate, called out from the darkness ahead. "Help! Please, someone help me!" Tarek and I exchanged a look. Luria. It was Luria's voice. But after what the smoke had just done, after hearing my dead mother's voice inside the haze, neither of us moved. Because this voice wasn't right either. It was broken, warped, as if someone was trying to remember how to speak with human lungs. The villagers held their breath as the dragging sound grew louder. Closer. I tightened my hand around the knife strapped to my belt. Because whatever was coming toward us in that tunnel, it wasn't walking, it was crawling. The dragging sound scraped closer, like flesh pulled over wet stone. Each breath in the tunnel tightened, the air thickening with a tension that made even the bravest instinct recoil. The villagers pressed themselves against the walls, some covering their mouths, others silently mouthing prayers meant for a gentler world than ours. "Luria," I called, my voice trembling despite my effort to keep it steady. The dragging paused. A wet inhale followed. Then the voice, too raw, too shredded, answered, "Jaren, help me?" Tarek leaned toward me, whispering, "That's not her. Be ready." I felt my pulse hammering against my ribs, heard my heartbeat echo in the narrow stone corridor, as I stepped forward just enough to see past the curve in the tunnel. The lantern behind me cast a trembling cone of light into the dark. Something entered the edge of the glow. At first, all I saw was a hand, thin, trembling fingers scraping across the stone floor, nails cracked and bleeding. My chest seized. The hand was Luria's. I knew the jagged scar across her knuckle. She'd cut it on a broken pot years ago. But the arm was wrong. Elongated. Too long. As if stretched like taffy, the bone beneath warped by some unseen grip. The flesh along her forearm was slick with soot that pulsed faintly, shifting as though alive. Then she emerged fully into the light. Gasps erupted behind me. A woman screamed. It was Luria, but not. Her body was twisted, contorted in ways no living spine could endure. Her legs bent at unnatural angles, dragging uselessly behind her. Her torso was elongated, ribs protruding sharply beneath skin coated in writhing ash. Her neck craned upward at a dislocated angle. Her face smeared black except for her eyes. Her eyes were hollow, just pits of swirling gray. When she opened her mouth again, ash sifted out like falling sand. Help, help! Not a plea. A recording. A mimicry. A memory used like bait. I staggered backward, choking on disbelief. Luria? Her head jerked sharply at the sound of her name, like a puppet tugged by unseen strings. The motion made something crack loudly in her neck. She crawled forward faster now, fingers clawing grooves into the soft stone. Her voice changed, deeper now, almost layered. Jaren? Come. Come. Tarek's hand snapped around my arm before I could step any closer. Don't let it touch you. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. Because as the creature that once was Luria dragged itself forward, something inside her chest shifted. Something dark and coiling, twisting beneath her ribs like a cluster of snakes. Soot poured from her mouth and eyes now, thick tendrils reaching outward. The smoke was inside her, living her, using her. Behind her, the tunnel floor was coated in a black smear where her body had dragged, leaving streaks that pulsed faintly like embers in dying coals. One of the villagers broke first. A man named Rydell, young, easily rattled, bolted past me screaming, "No, no, no! This isn't real!" He sprinted toward the entrance, toward the faint glow of the crater beyond. "Rydell!" I shouted. He didn't slow. The moment he crossed the threshold into the open crater, something lunged out of the smoke. Hands, dozens of them, materialized from the swirling gray, skeletal fingers latching onto his clothes, his arms, his face. He shrieked, clawing at the air, but the smoke surged, wrapping around him like a serpent. His scream gurgled, then cut off. His body vanished completely into the haze. Someone sobbed. Someone else fainted. Tarek swore under his breath. And Luria, if I could even call her that anymore, crawled another foot closer, her jaw unhinging wider than a human mouth could. From her throat came a new sound. Not words. A low, dragging imitation of breathing, a parody of human lungs filling with air. The villagers pressed back against the walls, but there was nowhere left to go. The tunnel was too narrow. The creature was too close. Her fingers twitched. Her shoulders convulsed. She lifted her head with a slow, trembling motion that made her neck bulge grotesquely beneath the skin. "Jaren," she croaked. But this time it wasn't an imitation. It was my mother's voice. My stomach dropped. My knife slipped from my fingers and clattered to the floor. That was the voice I remembered from childhood. The one that used to call me in for supper. The one that sang lullabies when I woke from nightmares. But here, in this thing, it twisted into something unholy. Tarek yelled, "Ignore it! That's not your mother." Luria's body convulsed violently. Then she lunged. I barely had time to react. I threw myself backward, slipping on loose gravel. Her fingers scraped the floor where my face had been a heartbeat earlier, leaving deep gouges. The darkness behind her bulged, swelled. Something inside the soot-filled tunnel was pushing forward. Not a person, not even a body, a shape, presence. The smoke, I realized, was not merely outside. It was here, inside the tunnels, inside her, inside us. "Run!" Tarek bellowed. "Deeper! Now!" But running deeper meant entering the old collapsed shafts. the unstable caverns, the place where dozens had died suffocating in darkness. Still, anything was better than staying with the crawling abomination using my mother's voice. I grabbed Myra's limp body, slung her over my shoulder, scooped up my knife, and sprinted deeper into the tunnels with the others. Footsteps thundered behind me. Lantern light bobbed wildly, shadows jerking across uneven walls. Behind us, Luria screamed, a sound that didn't belong to anything human. It followed us, echoing through stone. And the smoke followed her. Alive, hungry, learning. We ran until our lungs burned, until the air in the tunnels grew colder and tighter, until the smoke thing's scream faded into a distant, distorted echo swallowed by stone. But even then, none of us dared slow. The tunnels wound downward in a series of steep, uneven dips carved by miners who no longer had names. Every surface glistened with condensation, each droplet reflecting our lantern light like trembling stars. Our footsteps splashed in shallow puddles, sending ripples across stagnant black water that smelled of rust and old sorrow. Somewhere behind me, a child whimpered. A man cursed. Someone fell, scrambled up, and kept running. The darkness ahead pressed closer. The air tasted wrong. Too dry, then too damp, then tinged with something almost sweet. A sign we had entered a part of the tunnels untouched for years. Tarek finally rasped out, "Stop, here, catch your breath." We slowed, stumbling to a shaky halt in a wider chamber where the ceiling rose enough that I could stand fully without grazing my head. Lantern light stretched farther here, revealing chunks of shattered stone and collapsed support beams. Dust floated in sparse strands of lingering smoke, not from the crater above, but from something that had seeped through cracks in the earth. I laid Mira on the ground again, gently brushing soot from her cheek even though it made no difference. Her body felt lighter each time I touched her, as if something inside her was fading. Tarek leaned heavily on his stick, wheezing. "Roll call," he barked. "Say your names." One by one, voices echoed through the chamber, shaky but alive. "Salah, Brint, Elia, Heron,
Mita."
Others followed. Some voices were missing. Too many. When they finished, Tarek nodded grimly. "We stay together. No wandering off. No answering voices you think you recognize." A few villagers exchanged guilty looks. Everyone here had heard a loved one calling from the smoke at some point. That was the worst part of living in the cradle. You never truly stopped grieving because it never let you. My throat tightened. I forced myself to look at Mira again, hoping irrationally that she might breathe, twitch, anything. Instead, the black streaks along her throat seemed darker than before. Tarek crouched painfully beside her. "She might still be in there," he murmured. "Somewhere beneath what it did to her." "What did it do?" I whispered. He hesitated. "Do you remember the old stories? The ones about the crater speaking before it swallowed its first victims? How it used to whisper to miners before the Great Collapse? They're legends. Most legends begin as truths softened by time." He ran a finger lightly along the stone floor. "There were rumors that the mountain wasn't dead even before it fell in on itself. That it breathed. That it pulled memories into its lungs. That those who inhaled its fumes sometimes came back. Changed." I frowned. "You think the smoke has always been alive?" "I think," he said quietly, "we mistook something ancient for a natural phenomenon." A chill prickled across my arms. Before I could respond, we heard it. A faint sound deeper in the tunnels. A soft tapping. Not like footsteps. Too rhythmic. Too deliberate.
"Top, top, top."
The villagers stiffened. "That's coming closer," Elia whispered. Tarek raised a hand. "Lanterns down." We lowered them to the floor. The shadows lengthened, merging. My breath fogged faintly in the colder air. The tapping grew louder.
"Top, top, top."
I tightened my grip on my knife. Then a voice drifted toward us, soft, childlike, trembling. "Is someone there?" Salah gasped. "Taryn?" she whispered. "That sounds like my daughter." "No," Tarek hissed, grabbing her arm. "Not her." Not here. But the voice came again, closer this time, echoing eerily off the tunnel walls. Mama, are you there? I swallowed hard. Sounded real. Too real. Then footsteps, small, hurried, pattered toward us. A figure appeared in the darkness ahead. Small, thin. A girl. She staggered into the edge of our lantern light and collapsed. Sala tore free from Tarek's grip and ran to her, falling to her knees. Taryn! My baby Taryn! The girl lay face down, tiny shoulders shaking. Sala turned her over gently and froze. So did the rest of us. Taryn's eyes were gone. Not taken. Not missing. Just empty. Smooth hollows of swirling ash, shifting like smoke trapped inside her skull. Her mouth hung open in a silent cry, and from her lips leaked the faintest threads of gray mist. She reached for her mother blindly. Sala sobbed. Taryn, you're alive, you're still. The girl's hand jerked upward with sudden, unnatural force. Her fingers wrapped around Sala's throat. Hard. Sala choked, clawing at the small hand that now squeezed with impossible strength. Get her off! Brent shouted, rushing forward. But I had already moved. My knife sliced through the air and met something that wasn't flesh. It slid through Taryn's arm like cutting through dense fog. Her limb separated and dissolved into smoke. Her other hand shot toward me, clawed fingers forming from swirling soot. I ducked back just in time. Behind us, someone screamed. The air in the chamber suddenly thickened, twisting with moving shadows as more figures began forming behind Taryn. Small ones. Child-shaped, their hollow faces emerging from the smoke like nightmares learning how to wear human skin. Tarek shouted, "Back! Back into the narrow passage." We scrambled toward the smaller tunnel at the far end of the chamber, pushing one another in panic. I grabbed Sala, who sobbed uncontrollably, and dragged her with me as Taryn's half-formed body crawled after us, her empty eyes leaking smoke. As I stumbled into the narrow passage, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The cavern groaned, stone cracked, and then the chamber behind us collapsed with a thunderous roar. Dust blasted forward, choking us. Screams echoed, then silence. I coughed, blinking the dust from my eyes, heart pounding wildly. When the debris settled, I realized something horrifying. Half the villagers were gone, buried, or worse, and the passage we'd retreated into, it only went deeper, into the oldest parts of the tunnels, into the dark no one had entered for decades. Beside me, Tarek whispered what we were all thinking. The smoke drove us here, not by accident, by design. The dust settled slowly, drifting down like gray snow onto our hair, our clothes, our faces. The air tasted of crushed stone and something older, something that had been sealed away for generations and was now free again. No one spoke at first. We just stared at the collapsed chamber behind us, a jagged wall of boulders and broken beams sealing off the tunnel. The lantern's dim glow flickered across sharp stone edges that jutted out like teeth. Half of our group was gone. Sala sobbed quietly beside me, her body trembling. I didn't know whether she mourned the villagers lost in the collapse or the thing that had once been her daughter. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe her mind hadn't reached the point of understanding yet. Brent paced aggressively, fists clenched, teeth grinding. Aaliyah leaned against the wall, staring vacantly at the pile of rubble as if expecting someone to crawl out from beneath it. Tarek was the only one who didn't look overwhelmed by shock. He studied the wall of debris with narrow, calculating eyes, listening to the faint settling sounds echoing from beyond. "The smoke did this," he said quietly. Brent snarled. "We ran in here ourselves, old man." No, Tarek shook his head slowly. "It wanted us to. It used Luria. It used the children. It herded us like livestock into a pen." His words silenced the tunnel. I felt a tightness coil inside me. But why lead us deeper? If it wanted to kill us, it could have done it above. Tarek met my eyes. "You know why." I didn't. But some part of me, the part that had heard my mother's voice from the smoke, the part that had seen Luria twisted into something unholy, knew he was right. This was not random. This was a hunt, and we were being driven. Something dripped from the ceiling, landing softly on my shoulder. I touched it with 2 fingers. It was thick, black, warm, not water. Brent swore and stepped back as more drops began to fall. Slow at first, then faster. A steady patter. Liquid darkness running along the cracked stone above us. "What is that?" Aaliyah whispered. Tarek raised his lantern, and the moment the light touched the ceiling, we all recoiled. The stone above was veined with thick, black streaks that pulsed faintly, like veins or roots. They curled across the rock, branching, weaving, converging deeper into the passage ahead. Where the streaks thickened, droplets seeped from them and splat onto the floor, forming dark pools that glistened like oil. But oil didn't pulse. "Is that part of the smoke?" Salah choked out. No, Tarek's voice was barely a whisper. "This is older than the smoke." The floor trembled beneath our feet. Just once, but enough to send ripples across the pools of black liquid. Something deep below shifted, moved, breathed. We stepped backward instinctively. The tunnel seemed to inhale with us. Then, a whisper slipped through the dark ahead. Not a voice, not even a word, just breath. A slow, deliberate exhale that brushed against our skin like a cold hand. Aaliyah whimpered, pressing her back into the stone wall. Tarek tightened his grip on his walking stick. "Lanterns up. Move carefully. Stay quiet. Move," Brent hissed. "Into that? Are you insane? We need to dig back through the collapse." "You'll suffocate or be crushed," Tarek replied. "Or worse, the smoke creatures will return. We stand no chance going back." "So we go forward?" Brent demanded. "We follow the veins? Deeper into whatever this is." Tarek didn't answer. He didn't have to. We all knew we had no choice. The smoke was blocking the only exit. The chamber behind us was sealed. And if we stayed here long enough, the things wearing the shapes of children would find another way in. I swallowed hard, lifted my lantern, and stepped first into the deeper darkness. The others followed reluctantly, the sludge dripping on us like the cave itself was bleeding. The passage narrowed as we moved. The black veins thickened, running down the walls like charred roots, their surfaces rippling as though something crawled inside them. Each step deeper made the air grow heavier, denser, as if the tunnel was filled not with air, but with breath stolen from something alive. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, the passage opened into another cavern. A vast one, so wide our lantern light couldn't reach its edges. Our flames flickered wildly, reacting to the draft that flowed through the chamber like an exhale. Then we heard it, a heartbeat, faint, rhythmic, deep within the dark. Thump, thump, thump. Salah gasped. Brent stepped back. Aaliyah covered her ears as if she could shut the sound out. Tarek's face drained of color. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be." I forced my voice to stay steady. "What is this place?" Tarek turned to me, eyes haunted. "This is the old mine's deepest chamber. The one from the stories. The place the miners reached just before the mountain collapsed. The one they swore they heard breathing." "That was a myth," Aaliyah said weakly. Tarek shook his head. "It wasn't a mountain that collapsed," he said. "The miners woke something, and it inhaled them." The heartbeat grew louder. Thump, thump, thump. The darkness ahead pulsed with it. And then a voice. Not a whisper, not a mimicry, but something vast and ancient, rumbled through the cavern. "You should not have come back." The lanterns flickered violently. The black veins along the walls shuddered, and the heartbeat quickened. Something in the dark was waking. The fog throbbed that night, as if breathing against the crater's walls. I felt the pulse of it under my palms as I climbed down the final steps and reached the ground again. My legs were trembling. Not from fear this time, but from something stranger, something electric threading through the air. The smoke pressed closer, curling around me like a living shawl. For a moment, I thought I heard my name whispered inside it. Not my father's voice, not my mother's, not Myra's. It was my own, just the faintest echo of it, stretched thin and distorted, as though the smoke was practicing, learning how to be me. I didn't answer. I didn't dare. The village's lamps glowed as dim orange blurs through the haze. Shapes floated between the houses. Some tall, some hunched, some limping, some drifting like weightless cloth. They brushed against one another without reaction, like phantoms passing through phantoms. I picked my way along the path, fighting the urge to run. Running was pointless here. The smoke always knew where you'd go. As I passed the well, a figure rose out of it, slowly, painfully, as though climbing an invisible ladder. It had the outline of a man, broad-shouldered, head bowed. The smoke gathered thicker around its face, knitting itself into something almost recognizable. My father, or at least the smoke's idea of him. I stopped, breath frozen. The figure's head tilted, and though it had no proper eyes, I felt it looking at me. "Not tonight," I whispered, forcing myself to keep walking. Followed anyway. The smoke face flickered, trying to sharpen, to show me the details I wanted, but it never could get them right. My father's nose was wrong. His height was wrong. The angle of his jaw shifted every few seconds. It wasn't him. It wanted to be him, and that want was worse than any monster with the courage to show its real face. I ducked into my house and shoved the door shut. The figure stopped outside. It didn't knock. It just hovered, waiting, as they often did when they thought someone might still open the door for them. Inside, the walls murmured with echoes the smoke brought in through the cracks. I sat on the floor, back against the bed, breath rough. My hands smelled like smoke even though I'd scrubbed them earlier. I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid, but because I'd begun to understand something. The smoke didn't show us copies of the dead. It showed us what we wished they would be. More obedient, more attentive, more present. It mimicked the versions of people we replayed in our private grief. It was learning our grief, and mine was fresh. Near dawn, someone knocked. An actual knock, sharp, deliberate. I jerked upright so fast I hit my head against the wall. "Lorin? You awake?" It was Sala. I scrambled to the door and opened it a crack. The morning light barely penetrated the crater, but enough filtered through that I could see her face, pale and strained. "You need to come," she said. "It's Mira." My blood turned to ice. "What about her?" "She's in the square." She came back. For a moment the world tilted. I grabbed the doorframe. "That's impossible." "I know." She looked at me the way someone looks at an injured dog, careful, apologetic. "But she's there." I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I ran. The smoke parted around me as if guiding me. The village was awake. People gathered at the edge of the square, whispering, trembling, some praying, some backing away in fear. The figures of smoke hung farther back than usual, as if watching with curiosity or jealousy. And in the center of the square, standing barefoot on the ash-dark stones, was Mira. She faced away from me, hair hanging over her shoulders exactly the way it used to when she came home late from the orchard. Her clothes were the ones she'd worn the day she vanished. Her favorite wool coat, her boots missing because she'd left them by the door. "Mira!" My voice cracked. She didn't move. I stepped closer, heart pounding so violently I felt dizzy. When I was only an arm's length behind her, she finally turned. Her face was exactly hers. Her eyes were exactly hers. But her expression, empty, soft, expectant, wasn't. Not once, in all the years I'd known her, had Mira ever looked at anyone that blankly. Then she spoke. "Not Lorin. Not hello. Not I'm back," she said, in a voice too smooth, too deliberate. "Is this what you wanted?" It hit me like a physical blow. The smoke didn't bring Mira back. I did. My grief had shaped her. My desire had sculpted her. And the smoke had listened. All around us, the smoke figures drifted closer, rustling like leaves. Some tilted their heads. Some stretched long fingers. Some collapsed into heaps only to rise again, trying new forms. "Learning," Sala whispered beside me. "Lorin, don't go near her." But I already had. The Mira shape reached out a hand, and though it trembled like heat above a flame, It was solid enough to cast a faint shadow. "Come," she said. "It's easier if you stop fighting." The smoke thickened around my ankles. My lungs tightened. She stepped closer and closer, and the smoke behind her shifted, reshaping, rearranging, forming more silhouettes. All of them familiar, all of them mine. My father, my mother, Mira again, myself. A circle of mirrors made of breath and longing, all whispering the same question in unison. "Is this what you wanted?" The ground beneath my feet pulsed like a heartbeat. I realized the smoke didn't simply mimic. It harvested, and I had just given it something it had craved for years, hope. It surged upward, swallowing the sky, and I made the mistake of answering. The moment the words slipped out of me, soft, barely a breath, barely even a thought, the smoke reacted like an animal that had been waiting for its leash to snap. Yes. Only afterward did I realize I hadn't spoken it aloud. I had thought it, and the smoke had heard. It surged inward, coiling around my ribs, my throat, my wrists. The air thickened until breathing felt like inhaling wet linen. The mirror shape smiled. Not her smile. A version of it softened, stretched, stripped of all the edges that once made her human. "Then let us finish it," she whispered. I stumbled backward, but the ground behind me rose. Not with stone, but with smoke, hardening into a barrier like glass. When I looked down, the fog was climbing my legs like vines. Sala screamed my name somewhere behind me, but when I turned my head, I couldn't see her anymore. Only blurs of villagers retreating, swallowed by the haze. The square was no longer a square. It had become a room made of smoke, a cradle. The mirror shape stepped closer, reaching for my face. When her fingers brushed my cheek, a static sting snapped through me. Not sharp, but intimate, like the shock of touching someone after walking on wool. "I didn't want this," I choked out. "You did," she murmured. Not with words, with longing. Behind her, the other shapes began to approach. My father's distorted outline, my mother's wavering silhouette, a version of me whose head tilted at an impossible angle. They gathered around us, forming a ring. The world outside the crater disappeared. There was only the smoke and the want it fed on. A hiss rose from the ground, like steam escaping through a crack. The tremor ran up my spine and into my skull, and for a moment, I saw something that wasn't the village. Something far below it, deeper in the crater. A pit inside the pit. A place where the smoke was thickest, darkest. Where it swirled with purpose, not wandering but waiting. The cradle's heart. "Lorin." The mirror shape cupped my face with both hands, lifting my gaze to hers. The warmth of her touch was nearly right, nearly comforting, nearly familiar. You kept thinking she could walk back to you, that she would. The smoke only gave shape to what you refused to say. My chest caved inward. "She's dead." "Yes," she said gently, "but your grief isn't." Her thumbs slid across my cheeks. The ring of smoke figures tightened. "And grief belongs to us." The smoke rushed upward, forcing my arms to my sides. I tried to shout, but the air thickened around my mouth, sealing it, shaping itself like an invisible mask. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't even panic properly. Everything slowed. My heartbeat became a dull, distant thud. The mirror shape leaned in until her forehead touched mine. One breath, two. On the third, she exhaled. Her breath entered me like liquid fire. Hot, metallic, burning through my lungs, my veins, my thoughts. The shapes around us trembled with hunger. As the heat coursed through me, I heard a voice layered beneath hers, deeper, older, resonant as the crater itself. "You wished. We listened. Now we take." My vision blurred. The walls of smoke pulsed, forcing me downward. My knees hit the ground, and I felt the crater floor give way slightly, as though the earth were softening beneath me. Sala's voice broke through the roar. "Lorin, fight it." I couldn't turn toward her, but I felt a jolt, someone pulling at my shoulder. The mirror shape's expression twisted from serene to sharp. "Do not interfere," she hissed. The smoke lashed outward like tendrils, striking something, or someone, behind me. I heard a cry, then a thud, then silence. My pulse hammered. My lungs spasmed. My thoughts frayed. The mirror shape pressed her hands to my chest. "You don't belong outside the cradle anymore," she whispered. "You belong with us." And the ground opened beneath me. Smoke poured upward. Darkness rushed in. I fell. Not downward, outward, inward, sideways. Every direction at once. My limbs dissolved into the fog. My memories frayed, tattered by invisible claws. The last thing I saw before the crater swallowed me was the mirror shape's face dissolving into 100 smiling fragments, each one whispering the same soft, awful promise. "We will make you whole again." Then everything vanished. Except the smoke. And the wanting. I didn't land. There was no ground to hit. Only layers of cold, weighted air that folded around me like wet cloth. The deeper I sank, the heavier it became, until even the thought of moving felt like dragging myself through tar. Yet I wasn't drowning. I was being carried. The smoke had hands here, thousands of them, some small as children's fingers, some long enough to coil twice around my ribs. They guided me downward, not gently, not cruelly, but with the certainty of something that had rehearsed this moment countless times. I felt peeled. A memory tugged free of me. My 9th birthday, Mira handing me a stone polished smooth by the river. The smoke took it, examined it, hummed with interest. Another memory. My father laughing as he taught me to snare birds. Another, my mother brushing ash from my hair after a storm. One by one, the smoke unstitched me. When I finally stopped sinking, I was suspended in a dim, pulsing chamber the size of a cathedral. The walls weren't walls at all, they were lungs. Massive, translucent lungs. They expanded and contracted with a slow, rhythmic groan that vibrated through my bones. At their center lay a hollow. A cradle. The true cradle. Made not of smoke, but of something older. Black stone veined with a dull red light, like blood glowing through cracked skin. And I was above it, held, waiting. A voice rose from below. Not one voice, but many speaking through a single enormous breath. "You are shaped now. Ready. Open." I tried to scream, but my throat only crackled with smoke. I tried to move, but the hands or tendrils or thoughts held me tighter. The cradle pulsed, and something rose from within it. At first it looked like vapor, thicker than any smoke above. Then it narrowed, lengthened, sharpened, forming a silhouette. A human silhouette. Its head crowned with the broken halo of a face still sculpting itself, still deciding what it wanted to be. It approached me with motions like slow lightning, shivering, jagged, yet fluid. When it reached me, it tilted its forming head and said, "I am what you need." Its voice was a perfect imitation of mine. Not my voice now, my voice as a child. "No," I whispered, choking on heat. "No, stop." The figure reached toward me, touching the center of my chest with a single finger. Liquid fire burst outward. My back arched. My ribs felt like they were being pried apart by invisible hooks. The thing spoke again, its voice shifting, becoming my father's, then my mother's, then Myra's, then dozens of voices I didn't recognize. "We learn what you hide. We learn what you bury. We learn what you fear most." The chamber brightened with each word, red veins flaring like lightning. I felt my memories thinning, becoming threads the cradle could pluck. Faces blurred, voices blurred, entire years blurred. I was unraveling. "Stop," I managed to croak. "Please." The smoke around me tightened, as if amused. There is no stop, only shaping, only becoming. The child voice figure pressed its forehead to my sternum. Heat surged again, deeper this time, reaching places physical pain never could. I felt something inside me stretch, crack, open. My name slipped out of me, not spoken, taken. The smoke inhaled it with delight. The figure's chest split open, revealing a hollow cavity where a heart should be. Smoke swirled inside it like a storm trapped in a cage. It lifted me easily, almost lovingly, and lowered me toward that cavity. The message was unmistakable. It wasn't consuming me. It wanted to wear me.
No, 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 Itrasha.
The cradle trembled. The lungs in the walls stuttered. The entire chamber quaked as if surprised by my resistance. The figure hesitated. Just enough. A single crack of cold air cut through the suffocating heat. A voice, hoarse, shaking, shouted my name. Lorin! Sala. She'd followed me into the pit. Idiot. Brave, furious idiot. A wave of energy ripped through the chamber as she hurled something. A lantern, burning bright, into the smoke. Light. Not sunlight, not firelight. True light. The smoke shrieked, recoiling as if stabbed. The tendrils holding me loosened. The child voice figure's chest clamped shut, its form flickering violently. I fell from its grasp. Sala caught my arm barely and dragged me onto a ledge of rough stone just as the smoke surged upward like a wounded beast. Move, she gasped. I stumbled to my feet, lungs burning, vision swimming. The chamber convulsed, the cradle splitting open with a roar that shook the air. The fake child screamed in a chorus of voices that did not belong together. The smoke walls buckled. The lungs ruptured. Black-red light burst through the cracks. Run! Sala shouted, pulling me toward a narrow passage twisting upward through the collapsing cradle. Behind us, the smoke bellowed with rage. Not a sound, but a force that clawed at our backs, trying to drag us in again. We climbed, fell, climbed again. The world above seemed impossibly far, impossibly bright. And the smoke was coming after us. The smoke didn't chase like a creature. It surged like a tide. Fast, hungry, inevitable. By the time Sala and I reached the first bend in the narrow stone passage, a roar of air exploded behind us, a hot wind shoving us upward as though the cradle itself had exhaled in fury. The walls vibrated. Dust rained down. My ears rang with a deep, bone-shaking hum. Sala's fingers locked around my wrist. Don't stop, she hissed. I'm trying. My lungs convulsed. Every breath tasted like ash. A tendril of smoke shot past my shoulder like a spear, slamming into the wall and melting it into smooth, black glass. Another lashed at my ankle. I nearly fell, but Sala yanked me upright with a strength I didn't know she had. We're almost there, she shouted. She was lying. We were nowhere close. The passage wound upward in steep, irregular steps that had not existed until the stormlight lantern struck the chamber. They were forming as we climbed, cracking open from the stone like veins surfacing through flesh. The smoke slammed into the hallway behind us, solidifying into shapes. Many shapes, limbs, faces, hands, too many hands. They dragged along the walls like children feeling their way in the dark. One voice reached me. A voice shaped like Myra's, soft and pleading. Lorin, come back. It hurts without you. I nearly faltered. Sala slapped me hard enough to blur my vision. Don't you dare listen. We scrambled up a sharp corner where the passage narrowed enough that our shoulders scraped both walls. The smoke hammered into the space, but the tightness slowed it, forcing it to thin and seep rather than surge. Ahead, a faint gray light trickled down from above. Real light, the crater's sky. Hope. I lunged for it. The smoke screamed. Not aloud, but inside my skull. 1,000 voices layered into a single violent denial. The child voice figure's cry cut through the rest, high and furious. You are not finished. A tendril wrapped around my ankle and jerked hard. My body whipped backward, slamming against the steps. Sala shrieked and grabbed both my arms, bracing her legs against the stone, pulling with everything she had. Lorin, fight it. But the smoke had learned me. Learned my memories, my hesitations, the soft places in my mind where doubt lived. It whispered them all back at me. My father's disappointment, my mother's fading strength, Myra's last night. I felt myself loosening, my body slipping backward, my grip on Sala weakening as the smoke tugged harder, dragging me toward the dark below. And then, a sound split the air above us. A crack, a shattering. Not the smoke, something else. The crater's rim. Sunlight poured down in a thin, piercing shaft weak, filtered, almost apologetic, but sunlight nonetheless. It struck the smoke tendril on my ankle. The tendril shriveled instantly, curling away like burnt hair. The scream inside my skull turned feral. Sala didn't wait. She hauled me up the final stretch, our feet slipping on scorched stone, hands scraping raw. The sunlight widened with each step as we neared the opening. A jagged mouth torn into the crater wall. The smoke surged behind us, but the beam of light carved a harsh dividing line across the passage. The smoke recoiled from it, boiling and twisting with hatred. But it didn't retreat. It learned, formed. The child voice figure rose at the edge of the light, half in, half out, its form flickering violently. Its face contorted into a version of Myra's, then mine, then my father's, then something unrecognizable, a mask of raw longing and desperation. His voice softened, breaking. "Don't leave us." The ache of that voice almost stopped my heart. Almost. Sala grabbed my hand and yanked me into the sunlight. The moment we crossed, the smoke shrieked and recoiled fully, slamming back down the tunnel as though pushed by an invisible force. The light wasn't strong. It was dawn light, thin and muted, but it was enough. We collapsed onto the ledge outside the crater wall, gasping, trembling. My chest felt hollow, scraped clean. My limbs were trembling uncontrollably. Sala leaned against me, breath hitching. "We're alive," she whispered. I stared back into the darkness below. The smoke writhed just beyond the reach of the sunlight, seething, waiting, learning. It hadn't lost me. Not really. Not permanently. Only postponed. As I watched, the darkness shifted, and a familiar silhouette formed just inside the shadow, just beyond the light's touch. Mira. Perfect. Still. Waiting for me. My breath caught. She lifted a hand. Slow, pleading, the way she had the night she disappeared. "Lorin," she whispered, her voice carrying up the stone like a caress. "Please, come home." Sala's fingers tightened painfully around mine. "Don't look," she said, but I already had, and the smoke had seen me see it. Sala dragged me backward from the crater's edge, but my feet barely obeyed. My mind stayed fixed on the figure waiting just inside the shadow, Mira, or the shape that pretended to be her, holding her hand out toward me with that small, helpless tremor she used to have when she was afraid of losing someone. It was exactly right. Too right. The real Mira had never reached for me that way. The real Mira had been angry, bright, stubborn. She grabbed, demanded, argued, fought. She never pleaded. But the smoke knew what I wanted to remember. Not who she really was. Sala shoved me so hard I stumbled. "Don't let it see you hesitate," she snapped, voice shaking. "That's how it gets in." I forced myself to blink, to turn away. Each second felt like tearing a hook slowly out of my chest. Behind us, the crater groaned. Not the earth, but the smoke inside it, shifting with irritation, adjusting, choosing a new strategy. The sunlight was growing stronger with each passing moment. But dawn only lasts so long. Sala steadied me. "We have to move. If the light changes, it'll climb again." We hurried along the outer path, the stones still warm from the crater's breath. The air tasted clean for the first time in days. Crisp, cold, terrifying in its clarity. My lungs didn't know what to do with it. Each inhale felt too sharp, like drinking ice. "Why did you come for me?" My voice cracked. "You should have left me." She glared at me, furious. "What, and let that thing wear your face? You think I'm stupid enough to live in a village with two Lorins?" A strangled, humorless laugh rattled out of me. But something shifted behind us. Soft, distant. A gentle gust moving up the tunnel. The smoke wasn't angry anymore. It was calm. That was worse. Sala heard it too. Her face drained of color. "Hurry," she whispered. We climbed the last stretch to the upper rim, muscles screaming, hearts pounding. Every step felt as if invisible eyes pressed between our shoulder blades. By the time we reached level ground, the sun had risen enough to spill over the crater wall. The light washed across the stone fields stretching outside the village, and for a moment, a single blessed moment, the world looked normal. Silent. Ordinary. Safe. We collapsed in the grass beyond the rim. Sala was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I felt hollow, scraped out from the inside, like the cradle had taken something essential and not yet decided whether to give it back. I tilted my head toward the crater. Smoke still rose, slow and lazy, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. It wasn't retreating. It was thinking. Sala wiped her face with her sleeve. We need to tell the others. They need to get out before nightfall. They won't leave, I said. They'll say the smoke's always been there, that it's always tried things like this. That it's just… I swallowed hard, while burning the back of my throat. Just grief. Just memories. They don't know what's underneath. Her voice trembled. They don't know what you saw. I didn't answer. Some part of me couldn't speak the truth aloud. If I named the shape in the cradle, if I described how it tried to hollow me out and fit itself inside, the words might become a thread the smoke could follow back into me. Sala pushed herself to her feet. Come on. The council will listen to you. The wind changed. Just a gentle shift, nothing strong, nothing dramatic. But it carried a sound with it. A voice. Soft, familiar, unbearably close, drifting up from the crater in a whisper that wrapped around my spine. Lorin, you forgot something. My blood froze. Sala grabbed my arm. Don't. But I was already turning. The smoke had risen higher along the crater's interior wall, clinging to it like a dark tide climbing the shore. Just below the rim, a figure formed out of it, tapering upward, shaping itself with patient precision. It wasn't Mira this time. It was me. Not the me standing beside Sala. A different me. A version the smoke remembered. Younger. Softer. Lonely. The figure smiled with my old smile. You left this behind, it said, reaching upward with an open hand. In its palm sat something small. Something I hadn't seen in years. A river-polished stone. The one Mira gave me on my 9th birthday. The one I thought I lost. But I didn't lose it. The smoke took it, fed on it, learned me through it. Sala inhaled sharply. Don't move, Lorin. The smoke me tilted its head, studying me with patient affection. You can take it back, it murmured. If you want. My throat tightened, because I did, and the smoke knew it. Behind the figure, the crater stirred. Slow, deliberate, expectant. The cradle wasn't finished with me. Not even close. I stepped back. Just one step. But the smoke me reacted as though I had struck it. Its head twitched, neck bending slightly too far, like it hadn't fully learned the limits of human joints. The hand holding the stone remained outstretched, steady, patient. Don't be afraid of yourself, it whispered. Sala moved between us like a shield. Lorin, don't look at it. But I already was. The stone lay in its palm exactly as I remembered, warm gray, veined with pale lines like threads of silver. Myra's fingers had been cold when she pressed it into my hand that night by the river, saying, For luck, you need it more than anyone. I reached for it before I realized I had moved. Sala slammed her hand against my chest.
No.
Her shove knocked me out of the trance. My heel slipped on the grass and I nearly fell. The smoke me's expression shifted instantly. Sadness, disappointment, a wobble in the shape like it was reconsidering what face to wear. Sala backed us both away, her breath trembling. It's bait. Lorin, do you hear me? It's bait. I know, but the truth was harder. I wanted it, not because of the stone, because of what the smoke knew to do with it. How it used memory as a hook, how it molded grief into something that looked like comfort. How it made my past feel alive again, if only for a moment. The smoke me stepped closer. When the sun hit its face, its left cheek flickered like melting wax. You were happier then, it said softly. When Mira was alive. When your parents were alive. When you still believed the world was small and safe. Stop, I rasped. No, it smiled wider, wrong, too wide, too eager. You don't have to hurt anymore. Sala pulled on my sleeve. We need to go. But the smoke me kept speaking. Its voice gentle, shaped to sound like the best version of my own. You're breaking, Lorin. Let me carry it for you. Let me wear it. Let me wear you. The world tilted. No, not the world. Me. A sudden weakness swept through my limbs, an invisible weight dragging me forward. The smoke me extended its hand a little higher, inviting. The crater behind it pulsed with dark red light, faint but steady, the color of the cradle's heart. My knees buckled. Lorin! Sala caught my arm, but she wasn't strong enough to hold me if I slipped fully. The stone glimmered. The smoke me whispered, "You were meant for us." And then the ground vibrated. A low rumble rolled through the earth, subtle but unmistakable. The smoke me froze. His head snapped to the side, listening to something deep below. Sala's grip tightened. What now? What is it doing? The smoke inside the crater shivered, rising in a spiraling column before collapsing inward, sinking down into the depths like the entire mass was being pulled by a thread. Retreating. No, responding. Something was happening in the cradle. Something waking. The smoke me turned its face back toward me. The flicker in its shape intensified, no longer unstable, but eager. The hand holding the stone withdrew slightly. We don't have time. Its form rippled, warping into something thinner, stretched. You have to come now. Called us. It wants you. My stomach clenched. What wants me? But I already knew the answer. The cradle. Not the smoke. The thing beneath the smoke. The thing the smoke fed. The thing the smoke was learning from. The ground tremored again, once, twice, like a heartbeat. Sala dragged me backward until my heels dug furrows in the grass. We're leaving. Right now. Right now. The smoke me stepped toward the rim, stopping exactly where the sunlight touched the stone. It did not cross. It only raised the stone again and whispered, "You belong to us." The voice layered mine, Myra's, my father's, dozens more. And underneath them all, the deep tone I heard in the cradle, heavy as mountains. Come. The air turned hot. The crater exhaled. And a thin tendril of smoke, so thin it looked like a thread, crept up over the rim, reaching toward my shadow. Not my body. My shadow. The sunlight blurred for a heartbeat, just enough for the tendril to quiver with anticipation. Sala screamed, "Run!" And we ran. Across the grass. Toward the village. Toward anything that wasn't the crater. But the smoke followed. Not like a wave. Not like a monster. Like a thought I couldn't outrun. I don't know how long I lay there, half slumped against the cold rock, listening to the smoke sigh and breathe above me like some enormous animal. Time didn't behave normally in the crater. It stretched, thinned, folded. Moments slipped between my fingers like loose dust. But eventually, maybe minutes, maybe hours, I pushed myself upright again. The fog was gentler now. Not gone, never gone, but softer, as if exhausted from its earlier violence. I took a breath that tasted like burned flowers and old rain. I had expected the figure of my mother to return, or my father's tall silhouette, or the soft humming shape that had tried to lure me deeper the night before. But nothing came. Only the shifting of pale density overhead, forming and unforming ribs, shoulders, faces that dissolved before fully arranging themselves. For the first time since returning to the Cradle of Smoke, I felt truly alone. Yet even that feeling was deceptive. The crater never left anyone alone. It simply hid what it wanted until the moment it chose to reveal it. I began walking, following a thin, barely visible path carved into instinct rather than memory. My steps echoed faintly. The smoke-thickened sound made it feel like each footfall fell inside my own skull. Somewhere in the distance, something clattered, stone against stone. The noise ricocheted oddly, directionless. I slowed. "Who's there?" I asked, even though I regretted the words instantly. Speaking one's fear aloud in the crater always felt like carving it into stone. The answer came in a voice I recognized too well. "Still wandering, Arion?" My stomach tightened. It was Sylvie. Her voice floated from deep within the fog, neither near nor far. Gentle, amused, the same tone she used when she found me falling asleep during smokewatch shifts when we were children. Sylvie? I whispered, my throat tightening. A form drifted forward, slow, elegant, unmistakable. Her outline sharpened as the smoke folded around her shape, building her from memory. Her braids swinging over her shoulder, her thin wrists, her slight smile that always hid something heavier beneath. She approached until she stood only a few feet from me. Except she wasn't standing. Her feet didn't touch the ground. My lungs stalled, ribs locking. You shouldn't be here, I said. And yet here I am. Her face softened. You came back for me. I shook my head hard.
No.
You're not her. Sylvie's shape flickered, fragments peeling away like torn paper caught in a breeze. But the illusion reassembled quickly, too quickly, and now she looked sad, almost hurt. Do you think I wanted to leave? She whispered. Do you think I wanted the smoke to swallow me? I squeezed my eyes shut, but the voice pushed through darkness with impossible clarity. You abandoned me. My breath caught. You turned back, she continued. You ran when the smoke reached for me. You didn't fight. You didn't even scream. That's not true, I forced out, but my voice trembled with a guilt I had buried for years. She stepped closer, not walking, simply gliding, and her hand, thin and colorless, rose as though to touch my face. I stumbled back, nearly falling. Don't, I hissed. Her mouth twitched into a faint half-smile. Ariane, you loved me once. Why fear me now? Because you're not alive. Because you're what the smoke wants me to believe. But the words tangled in my throat. The figure of Sylvie tilted her head, studying me the way a dream studies its dreamer. You came back to the cradle, she murmured. You came back to finish what you ran from. I came back to stop it, I said. To stop all of this. Sylvie laughed. Soft, musical, horribly wrong. You can't. This place doesn't need stopping. It needs remembering. Remembering what? She reached into the fog beside her, and the smoke abated. It deepened, swirled, coiling around her hand like a living rope. Something formed within it. A shape, a room, a doorway. The air chilled sharply, as though the crater itself inhaled. The image sharpened, and I felt the blood drain from my face. It was the day Sylvie vanished. The narrow paths, the leaning stones, the silvered tendrils of smoke rising like fingers. The moment I turned, the moment she screamed my name, my knees weakened. Do you see? Sylvie whispered. You remember now. I tried to go back, I said, barely audible. The smoke pulled you away. She smiled sadly. You've told that version so many times you almost believe it. I shook my head violently, the memory pressing against my skull like a trapped bird. I did go back, I growled. Sylvie's expression warped. For a moment, her face stretched too long, her eyes too dark. Then the shape corrected itself. No, she whispered. You didn't. And because you didn't, I belong to the smoke now. I felt something crack inside me. A moment of old grief sending out jagged new edges. Sylvie leaned close, her breath cold as winter stone. And soon, she said softly, so will you. I backed away until my shoulders pressed into the crater wall. The rock felt warm, warmer than it should have been, as if something pulsed beneath it. The smoke around Sylvie stretched, thinning into fingers that reached toward me with a slow, patient certainty.
No, irraspat.
You're not her. You're not. Sylvie's face softened again, but it wasn't the softness of comfort. It was the softness of rot, of something collapsing inward while pretending to hold shape. Come closer, she whispered. You owe me that much. My breath hitched. The smoke pressed around my knees, my waist, rising like water. Each strand of it clung to my skin with a faint static. I forced my legs to move sideways along the wall, scraping my palms against the rough stone for balance. Her head followed my movement, tilting with an unnatural smoothness. Running again? I'm not running. No, she said. You just don't want to face what you are. I know what I am. Do you? Her voice stretched, gentle turning sharp, human turning hollow. A coward. A survivor who didn't deserve to survive. The smoke kept that memory for you, precious and preserved. And you came back here, Arion. Why? I didn't answer. Because there was an answer. One I had ignored since the moment I stepped into the crater again. Because part of me still believed. Maybe she wasn't gone. Maybe she was waiting. Sylvie's figure flickered, and the air pulsed with her next words. You hoped I'd still be here. Something stung behind my eyes. I bit down on it hard enough to taste iron. I hoped to find the truth, I said. And what truth would that be? The smoke thickened around her, swirling with hunger. That I died afraid? That you left me? That this place doesn't give back what it takes? It's lying to me, I said. You're lying to me. Sylvie's smile sharpened until it was almost cruel. The smoke doesn't lie. It only shows you what you won't admit. Then her voice dropped, becoming a low murmur I felt in my ribs. You didn't come to save the village. You didn't come to stop the smoke. You came because guilt dragged you here like a rope around your throat. The words hit harder than the cold. But before I could respond, the ground beneath us trembled, subtle but unmistakable. A shiver in the stone, like a breath drawn deep below the earth. Sylvie's head snapped sideways, as though hearing something I couldn't. No, she whispered. Not yet. Her shape blurred, the edges unraveling like wet cloth. The smoke began pulling her backward, threads of her dissolving into the air. Sylvie? I reached out instinctively, even knowing she wasn't real. My fingertips passed through her cheek, through her hair, through the memory of her warmth. Her eyes, before they vanished, held a flicker of something that wasn't malice. It was fear. It's waking, she mouthed soundless. Then she was gone. The fog collapsed inward, swallowing the space she'd occupied. The crater went unnaturally quiet. No shifting, no whispering, no phantom footfalls. Just an awful, waiting stillness. I staggered forward, breath trembling, head ringing with her final words. It's waking. The crater had always felt alive. But now, for the first time, it felt conscious. And it was no longer pretending to sleep. Something deep beneath the rock exhaled. A long, slow, dragging breath that made the ground vibrate under my boots. A shape rose from the smoke ahead of me. Not human. Not even pretending to be human. Broad shoulders formed first, then limbs too long, then a face that was not a face, just an arrangement of shifting hollows. I froze. This was no memory. No hecho. This was the thing the villagers whispered about but never described. The thing older than the crater. The thing that made the smoke. Its body was made of living vapor, dense enough to hold form, yet constantly unraveling at the edges like an ancient tapestry. It leaned toward me, not walking, falling forward as though gravity bent differently around it. A low vibration thrummed in my chest. The creature's voice, if it could be called that. You return, it said, though its mouth never moved, and the words weren't sound but pressure. I couldn't speak. You seek what you abandoned. Images flared in the fog around it. Sylvie, screaming. My own silhouette turning away. Smoke swallowing her hand first, then her shoulder, then the last desperate angle of her face. I gasped, covering my ears, but the images burned behind my eyelids. No, I muttered, sinking to my knees. Stop. You deny your truth. The creature towered, expanding until it filled half the crater with its depth, its mass. You belong here. It reached toward me, an arm stretching impossibly long, its fingers trailing smoke that cut cold across my skin. But before it touched me, another sound broke the suffocating silence. A voice, faint, human, calling my name. Arion. My heart lurched. I knew that voice. It was Farah, one of the last village firekeepers, one of the few who had begged me not to return alone. Her torchlight broke through the fog in a trembling golden beam, and for the first time since entering the cradle, I saw the smoke recoil. Just a little, but enough. Arion, run! She screamed, and the creature's shape twisted violently, turning its featureless face toward her. I scrambled to my feet, but the fog around me thickened, gripping my legs like wet hands. "You cannot leave," the creature murmured, and its voice became the crater itself. Farah's torch sputtered, the flames twitching like frightened birds. I had only seconds to decide. If I ran toward her, I might reach the perimeter. If I stayed, the smoke would close over me, claim me the way it had claimed countless others. And Sylvie's last expression, fear, real fear, flashed through my mind. No more running. I forced a breath into my lungs and moved. I hurled myself toward Farah's flickering torchlight, each step a battle against the smoke pressing against my knees and ankles like a living tide. The air thickened, clutching at my ribs, dragging against my skin, trying to pull me backward. Not violently, but insistently, like a hand that believed it had the right to hold me in place. Behind me, the creature's form shifted with a low, grinding resonance that made my teeth ache. It didn't roar. It didn't chase. It simply moved, its bulk sliding through the fog like a mountain leaning forward to block out the sky. "Arion!" Farah screamed again, her voice cracking into panic. "Move!" I tried, but the smoke surged up in front of me, thickening into a wall. No, into silhouettes. Dozens of figures.
Familiar faces.
People from my past. My father, his stern brow furrowed. My mother with her quiet smile. Old Tuvan who used to carve charms for the children. My brother whose body we never recovered after the great rising of the smoke. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their forms trembling in the fog. My chest hollowed out. Every instinct screamed at me to go around them, through them, anywhere except toward them. But the wall of phantoms extended wide, closing off the path like a curtain pulled tight. Their faces softened, melted into sorrow. Their mouths opened in unison, and they whispered my name, Arion. It was little more than breath, but it carried weight, heavy, unbearable. I staggered, clutching my skull. "Stop, stop, you're not real." But the smoke didn't care about what was real, cared about what hurt. Behind the figures, the fog thickened into rising columns. The crater trembled with another long inhale, this time slower, deeper, as though the ancient thing beneath the stone savored my hesitation.
Farah's torchlight flickered violently.
"Arion, don't listen to them. They're not. Just move." "I can't," I choked. The figures stepped closer, their faces dimming, their outlines unraveling into tendrils that reached for me with a terrible tenderness. "You left us," they whispered. "You ran. You didn't come back. You let her die." A cold vice clamped around my ribs. The guilt that had stalked me for years surged to the surface like something long buried clawing out of the earth. And then, something snapped inside me. "No," the word tore out of my throat with more force than I expected. My voice sounded cracked, half feral.
"No, irrapata lode."
"I didn't leave you. I didn't leave any of you. I survived. And surviving isn't a crime." The figures froze. The wall of phantoms flickered, and the smoke behind them shivered as if startled. For the first time, it seemed unsure. I surged forward, pushing through the nearest figure. It burst into shreds of mist that swirled around me like frigid ribbons. But they didn't cling. They didn't stop me. I pushed through another and another. They broke apart like fragile ghosts made of frost. Farah's torchlight grew brighter, warmer, pulsing like a heartbeat calling me home. "Arion, hurry!" she shouted. The creature behind me moved, this time faster. The ground shook as its massive arm slammed down where I had stood seconds earlier, sending shockwaves through the ash-coated dirt. The impact knocked me off my feet and I hit the ground hard. The breath punched from my lungs. The world spun. Smoke coiled around my wrists, crawling upward like vines hungry for heat. I tried to wrench free, but the fog tightened, pulling my arms down into the dirt. Then Farah's voice cut through the suffocating haze, sharp as steel. "Let him go." Her torch swept through the air, and flames bit into the edge of the smoke, gripping me. The mist recoiled with a hiss, releasing my arms in an instant. I gasped and scrambled up. Farah's hand reached out to me, her face pale with fear but fiercely determined. And for the first time in the crater, I saw something like hope. But hope was short-lived, because the creature rose fully from the fog behind us. Not a shape anymore, not a silhouette, but a towering column of smoke and stone dust, a body as tall as the crater walls, its limbs made of shifting darkness, its torso etched with patterns that looked like ribs carved into mist, a face with no eyes, no mouth, only a hollow that pulled the air inward with an awful suction. Farah froze, her grip tightening painfully around my wrist. "Oh gods!" she breathed. "It's the old breath." The name struck me like a blow. The legends, the myths the elders told us when we were children. The first smoke. The thing that breathed this crater into existence. The thing that fed on memory and grief, that shaped itself from the echoes of the dead. The stories had always sounded exaggerated. Now they looked small, very small. The old breath lifted its endless arm and the smoke writhed with anticipation. Farah stepped in front of me, torch raised in shaking hands, her voice trembling but unbroken. "You can't have him," she said. The old breath paused. Then, slowly, so slowly the motion felt ancient. It turned its hollow face toward her. The temperature dropped with such sudden violence my breath crystallized in the air. It leaned closer, not in attack, in curiosity, as though Farah were something it had never seen before. "Who?" Its voice rumbled inside my bones. "Are you to deny me?" Farah swallowed hard but didn't back down. Someone had to break the silence. Someone had to do something reckless. Someone had to stop the thing that had claimed our village for generations. So I stepped beside her. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "She isn't denying you," I said. "I am." The fog rippled, confused. I took another step forward. "For Sylvie," I whispered. "For all of them. For myself." The old breath tilted its head, the hollow of its face widening as if inhaling deeper. And the crater responded. Stone groaned.
Fogtitskened.
The air pulled inward, tightening like the chest of something preparing to scream. Farah's eyes widened in terror. "Arion," she whispered. "What did you just do?" I didn't know, but I knew what I felt. For the first time in years, I wasn't running. The old breath inhaled. Not air, not smoke. Me. I felt it instantly. A pulling pressure inside my chest, as if invisible hooks had slid beneath my ribs and were tugging upward. My breath caught, stuck somewhere between throat and lung. A ringing began in my ears, faint at first but rising fast, sharp enough to blur the edges of the world. Farah grabbed my arm. Arion, stop. "I'm not doing anything," I choked. She dragged me backward, but the air around us had turned thick, syrupy, the kind you wade through in nightmares. The torchlight sputtered, shrinking into a flickering bead. The old breath's looming shape pulsed with movement, fog spiraling inward, layers folding onto layers. Then the crater shook. The ground heaved beneath us like something massive was stirring underneath. Rocks split, dust rained from above. Farah lost her balance and fell to one knee, but she dragged me down with her before I could be lifted off my feet by the pull. "Don't let go," she gasped. My fingers clamped around hers, knuckles cracking. The old breath leaned closer. The hollow where its face should be widened, deepening into a pit of swirling darkness. The suction intensified, pulling at my clothing, my skin, my blood. My memories flickered, sharp, involuntary, too many all at once. Sylvie laughing on the ridge as children. My mother kneading dough by lamplight. The night the smoke rose for the first time, writhing like wounded animals in the air. Sylvie's scream. My turning back. The guilt erupted through me in a blade of heat, and the old breath drank it in. The fog on its body brightened, fed by something inside me I couldn't stop releasing. The crater's air vibrated as though full of strings being plucked all at once. "Arion, look at me, look at me," Farah shouted, dragging my face toward hers. Her eyes, wide, terrified, desperate, shone like two torches in the gloom. "You don't have to prove anything," she said through gritted teeth. "You don't have to die for what happened." "I left her," I rasped.
No.
"The smoke took her." I ran. You were a child. The ringing in my ears cracked, splitting like thunder. That thing wants you to believe you're its property? Farah whispered, holding my face as the air swirled violently around us. But you're not. Do you hear me? You are not. The suction intensified. A scream tore out of my lungs before I could stop it. And then the smoke behind the old breath shifted. A figure formed. Soft.
Familiar.
Sylvie. Her outline flickered, pieces of her dissolving into thin phantom strands. But her eyes, faint, fog-white, locked onto mine. My heart stuttered. Arion, she whispered. Not the smoke's mimicry, not its taunting softness, but hers. The Sylvie I knew, the Sylvie who vanished, the Sylvie who never came back. Farah froze, torch trembling in her hand. Is that? I don't know, I breathed. Sylvie reached toward me. Her hand passed through the old breath's massive form like wind through a curtain. The creature didn't react. It didn't even notice her. The smoke around her dimmed, as if she had carved out a pocket of stillness in its shifting mass. Arion, she said again. Stop giving it what it wants. I don't understand, I whispered, blinking tears I couldn't hide. It wants me. It wants memories. It wants guilt. But she shook her head slowly, sorrowfully. It wants you to stay. The words cut deeper than any accusation.
Farah inhaled sharply.
She's right. That's what it does. It binds people to this place, to their worst moments, to the feeling they can't escape. Sylvie stepped closer, her form trembling like it was held together by will alone. You came back thinking you would fix what happened to me, she said quietly. But you can't. No one can. I squeezed my eyes shut, breath hitching. I should have gone after you. Maybe, she said softly. But even if you had, the smoke would have taken us both. Her voice softened even more. Don't let it take you now. The old breath shuddered. Not in pain. In resistance. The crater walls echoed with the sound of grinding stone. The suction increased again, pulling harder, furious now, like a beast sensing prey slipping away. Sylvie placed her hand over her chest, where her heartbeat once was. I forgave you long ago, she whispered. The fog around her pulsed, and then burst outward in a shockwave of light, faint but real, like moonlight breaking through smoke. The old breath recoiled. This hollow face twisted. The pull weakened just a fraction, but enough for air to return to my lungs in a violent gasp. Sylvie's form flickered, dimming. She stepped back. The light around her faded, and before she dissolved into the smoke completely, she whispered one final sentence. So quiet I almost missed it. Go! Her shape unraveled like ash caught in a breath. Gone. My sob caught in my throat. Farah's grip tightened painfully around my hand. The old breath roared, not loudly, but with a deep, vibrating groan that shook dust from the crater walls. Move!
Farah screamed.
Sylvie bought you a chance. Take it. She yanked me to my feet, and we ran. The old breath surged behind us, its limbs smashing into the ground, smoke crashing like tidal waves around our legs, clawing, grabbing, pulling. The crater narrowed ahead. Its edge, blurred but visible, glowed faintly under the morning light we hadn't seen for hours. Almost there.
Farah shouted.
The fog grabbed at my ankle. I stumbled. Farah stopped, screaming my name. The old breath rose behind us like a storm given bones. And I knew one of us wasn't making it out unless something changed. So I made a choice. Not the one the smoke had trapped me in for years. A new one. Farah, I shouted, pushing her forward with every ounce of strength I had left. G.O. Her eyes widened. Arion and O. But the fog surged, and the old breath's howl tore through the crater, and I felt the pull claim me again, and still I shoved her toward the light, toward the outside, toward safety, because I finally understood what Sylvie meant. It wasn't about saving the past. It was about ending the cycle. Farah hit the ground hard but rolled immediately, scrambling toward the narrowing path of light at the crater's edge. I saw her face twist, not in fear for herself, but for me. Arion, she screamed, reaching back even as she crawled forward. Don't do this. But the smoke surged between us, rising like a wall, swallowing her voice into a muffled echo. The old breath pulled again, harder. My feet slid backward across the dirt, my boots carving shallow trenches as the force dragged me toward its hollow center. The crater air tightened, thinned, thickened again. Contradictory, impossible, like the breath of something caught between living and unmaking. My knees buckled. This was it. This was the moment I had always imagined in nightmares. My body sinking into the fog, my mind dissolving into the ancient hunger, my memories fed like fuel into something older than grief, older than the village, older than the crater itself. But something unexpected happened. I stopped being afraid. I don't know when the shift occurred, between Sylvie's fading glow, Farah's desperate scream, or the cold of the smoke clutching my chest. But fear drained out of me, replaced by a strange stillness. Not calm, not acceptance, but clarity. The old breath pulled, and I stepped forward, not toward the edge, toward it. The smoke stiffened as if confused. The suction faltered for a fraction of a second. I felt the crater's breath pause. You want me? I said, my voice raw but steady. Then look at me. The hollow of the creature's face turned, widening slightly in something like curiosity. I stepped closer again, lifting my chin, the fog peeling my hair back, stinging my eyes. I'm not running, I whispered. Not anymore. The ground trembled sharply, like the thing beneath the crater didn't understand what I was doing, or didn't believe that anyone would willingly walk toward it. The smoke tendrils slowed, then stilled. I took another step. The suction brushed my face but did not seize me. I felt heat in my throat, like pressure building inside my own lungs. Not from fear, but from something gathering. For the first time since entering the crater, the old breath did not advance. It waited. Behind me, faint and distant, I heard Farah shouting something, but her words evaporated in the dense air. Couldn't turn back. If I did, the fear would return. If I did, the smoke would win. Sylvie, I said quietly, this is for you. A memory rose, a small one. Sylvie holding my hand when we were children, pulling me up the ridge after I fell. The warmth of her fingers. The way she said, you're fine. You always get up. Maybe she was right. The crater inhaled again, but weaker this time. The old breath leaned down, until its hollow face was almost level with mine. The smoke around its limbs thinned and recoiled slightly, like a tide hesitating. I felt something gather in my chest, something hot, sharp, and entirely my own. Guilt, loss, love, grief that had never been allowed to heal. Instead of letting the crater feed on it, I held it inside me, shaping it like a blade. You don't decide who I am, I whispered. Ido. And then I exhaled. Not breath, not smoke, but everything. The weight I had carried for years, the guilt I had swallowed day after day, the memory of my turning back, the scream that had haunted every dream. I forced it out of me, not surrendered, released. My chest burned as the emotion burst from me in a sound that wasn't entirely human. A raw, jagged cry that tore through the air like a crack of lightning. The fog around me blew outward in a violent ring, scattering the shapes forming near the ground, pushing back the smoke that clung to my arms and legs. The old breath reeled, its hollow face twisted, imploding slightly as if struck. The suction faltered. The crater walls quivered in what felt like alarm. I felt the moment shift. The creature wasn't feeding anymore. It was choking. My grief, my truth, my pain, things the crater had always devoured quietly, were too much in this raw, unfiltered surge. I staggered forward again, pushing into the thinning fog. You don't get to keep me, I said, my voice hoarse but strong. You don't get to keep anyone. The old breath's enormous form buckled. Smoke spilled off its shoulders like collapsing mountainsides. Its limbs wavered, thinning. The hollow face pulsed erratically, its edges folding inward like a dying ember. The ground shook violently. Another tremor, deeper and angrier. Somewhere behind me, Farah screamed my name again. The old breath lurched, reaching, grasping, desperate. But I didn't stop. "Let them go," I whispered. The crater cracked. Stones split in a thunderous roar that shook the air, sending shards of obsidian black rock flying. The tremor rolled upward from the deep, like a final breath being forced out against its will. The old breath howled, a sound that didn't come from a mouth but from the entire crater, echoing through my bones, ripping at the air. Then the smoke collapsed, not outward, inward, like a lung deflating. The old breath's massive shape folded in on itself, its limbs collapsing, its torso buckling into a whirl of thinning fog, its hollow face distorted, shrinking, until it imploded into a single tight vortex of gray. A final breath, then nothing. The crater fell silent. Completely, utterly. Silence so deep it felt wrong. I collapsed to my knees, every muscle shaking. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. But the fog around me was thin now. No claws, no voices, no shapes. Just smoke. Harmless smoke. Footsteps pounded behind me. Farah burst through the fading haze, torch in one hand, the other reaching toward me. She fell beside me, grabbing my shoulders with trembling fingers. Arion, are you alive?" she cried. I tried to answer. My throat didn't work, so I nodded. Her breath hitched in relief. She pressed her forehead against mine, shaking. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "So did I rasped. The crater around us was quiet, still, breathless. For the first time in my life, the smoke wasn't alive. It was just smoke. Farah helped me to my feet slowly, carefully, like lifting something fragile. "Is it over?" she whispered. I looked at the sky above us. Gray smoke parting into streaks of pale sunlight, soft and unfamiliar. "I think," I said softly, "it finally is." But the ending hadn't come yet. Not fully. There was still one thing I had to face. And I knew exactly where to go. I stepped to the crater's edge, the ground still trembling faintly beneath my boots. The smoke had thinned into nothing more than wisps, curling lazily upward, harmless now, like exhausted ghosts. The old breath, the thing that had haunted our village for generations, was gone. This hunger extinguished, at least for now. But the crater still held its weight. Its vast hollow yawned before me, silent, patient, as if it were breathing slowly, waiting to see what I would do next. I swallowed hard and looked down. The path I had taken, the winding steps, the twisted tunnels, the stone that had shifted beneath me like a living thing, was gone, replaced by jagged rock that led only to darkness. The cradle had reverted, as though the old breath had never risen. Yet I knew the truth. I had faced it. I had survived it. Farah's hand gripped mine tightly, grounding me. "Arion, you're shaking," she whispered. Her eyes scanned the crater floor, wary. "Do you feel it? Is it really over?" I shook my head slowly. I don't know." The weight of years of fear, guilt, and grief pressed against me, but it no longer controlled me. For the first time, I felt like myself again. The smoke had tried to shape me, pull me into the past, to punish me for surviving. And I had refused. Farah's torch flickered as she stepped closer. "Whatever happens, whatever is left down there, we survived." I let her words sink in, nodding. And then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I looked down into the crater. Not in fear, not in grief, but in quiet acceptance. The smoke was gone. The old breath's voice no longer echoed in my mind. And yet the crater remained. It was still a cradle of memories, of shadows, of things lost. It would always be that. But I no longer feared it. A soft wind brushed my face. The morning light touched the jagged stones, and for the first time, I noticed the faint traces of footprints leading down the rim, my own and Farah's. The crater had been a mirror, reflecting all the pain I had carried. Now it reflected something else. Strength, survival, choice. I exhaled, slowly, deliberately. The echo of the old breath was gone, but the lesson remained. The smoke had taken much, But it had not taken me. Not entirely. Farah squeezed my hand. "Come on," she said. "Let's leave this place. We need to tell the village, everyone, that it's time to move forward." I nodded. Together, we turned away from the crater, leaving its hollow silence behind. I didn't look back, not because I feared what I might see, but because I had nothing left to chase me there. The shadows of the past would always linger, yes, but they would no longer control me. We walked slowly toward the village, the morning sun climbing higher. Light broke across the stone fields, and for the first time, I noticed the quiet beauty that had been hidden under the cradle's smoke. Small flowers, fragile and pale, pushed through cracks in the rock. Birds began to call. The wind carried a sound of freedom I hadn't heard in years. I kept my eyes forward, chest still aching, mind still raw, but lighter. Somewhere behind us, deep in the crater, the smoke curled faintly in the wind. Harmless now, watching, maybe waiting, but no longer a master over memory, no longer a prisoner maker. I didn't know if it would ever fully disappear. Maybe it never would. But I knew this, whatever waited down there, I had faced it. I had walked through fear, through grief, through the echoes of everyone I had lost, and I had emerged. Farah glanced at me and smiled faintly. "We're really alive," she said. I nodded again, letting a small, genuine smile touch my lips. "Yes," I whispered. "We are." The cradle of smoke remained, silent and patient, a monument to the past. But the living, breathing world outside awaited us. And for the first time in my life, I felt the pull not of the past, but of what could come next. We walked on, step by step, leaving the shadow behind, moving toward the light. And the smoke curled behind us, harmless, quiet, finally at rest.